It's a Tuesday afternoon in 1962. Somewhere in suburban Cleveland, a well-dressed man in a narrow tie and pressed slacks walks up the front steps of a split-level ranch house. His black leather briefcase catches the afternoon sun. His shoes are polished, his hair is combed with pomade, and his smile is practiced but genuine. He's carrying something that will change this family's life forever, or at least that's what he's about to tell them. He presses the doorbell and waits, listening to the chime echo through the house. Footsteps approach. The door opens to reveal a housewife in a floral dress, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he says, touching the brim of his hat. "I'm here to talk to you about your family's future." This was America before shopping malls, before the internet, before you could order everything from your living room couch. This was when commerce came to you, one doorbell at a time, carried by an army of men and women who made their living by convincing strangers to let them into their homes and into their lives. They sold encyclopedias and vacuum cleaners, brushes and cosmetics, magazines and life insurance. They were teachers and philosophers, entertainers and psychologists, all rolled into one, and for 30 years, they were as much a part of American life as the mailman or the milkman. At its peak in the late 1960s, door-to-door sales employed nearly 4 million Americans. That's more people than worked in the entire automotive industry. They weren't just selling products. They were selling dreams, solutions, and the promise of a better life, one living room conversation at a time. The golden age of door-to-door sales began in the 1950s, built on the foundation of post-war prosperity and suburban expansion. Millions of young families had moved to new neighborhoods where traditional retail hadn't yet followed. Main Street was too far away, and shopping centers were still a novelty. If you wanted something beyond basic groceries, you either drove into town, which took time and gas money, or you waited for it to come to you. And come to you it did. The most famous were the encyclopedia salesmen, representatives of companies like World Book, Britannica, and Collier's. They weren't just selling books, they were selling education, opportunity, the chance to give your children advantages you never had. The encyclopedia salesman would arrive with sample volumes, charts showing how much smarter encyclopedia-owning children performed in school, and payment plans that made the impossible seem affordable. Just 50 cents a week, they'd say, less than a pack of cigarettes, and your children will have the world's knowledge at their fingertips. The vacuum cleaner demonstration was pure theater. The Kirby man, the Electrolux representative, the Rainbow System expert, they didn't just show you a product, they put on a show. They dumped dirt on your carpet, then demonstrate how their machine could pull up dirt you didn't even know was there. They'd vacuum your mattress and show you the horrifying amount of dead skin and dust mites that came out. They'd clean your drapes, your upholstery, even your walls. By the time they were finished, your house was cleaner than it had been in years, and their machine was sitting in your living room looking like the answer to every housekeeping prayer you'd ever had. But door-to-door salesmen sold everything. Fuller Brush men offered housewares that would transform your daily chores. Avon ladies brought cosmetics and beauty advice right to your door. Life insurance agents calculated exactly how much your family would need if something happened to you. Magazine subscription salesmen promised to bring the world's best publications to your mailbox every month. Tupperware parties weren't sales calls, they were social events where neighbors gathered to see miracle plastic containers that would revolutionize food storage. What made door-to-door sales work wasn't just convenience, it was personal connection. These weren't anonymous transactions in crowded stores. This was commerce on a human scale. The salesman learned your name, your children's names, your dreams and concerns. They customized their pitch to your specific situation. They built relationships. Many customers looked forward to the Avon ladies' monthly visit not just for the products, but for the conversation, the connection with someone from outside their daily routine. The sales techniques were sophisticated in ways that seem almost quaint now. Salesmen were taught to read body language, to listen for buying signals, to handle objections with empathy rather than pressure. They learned to sell benefits, not features. They understood that people don't buy products, they buy better versions of themselves. The encyclopedia wasn't just books, It was smart children and family pride. The vacuum wasn't just a machine. It was more time with family and a cleaner, healthier home. Training was everything. Companies like Fuller Brush and Electrolux had programs that rivaled college courses. New salesmen learned psychology, presentation skills, and territory management. They were taught to dress professionally, to project confidence without arrogance. Many discovered talents they never knew they had. Shy men became confident speakers. Former factory workers learned business strategy. The job attracted resilient people who were genuinely interested in others. You had to believe in your product, because authenticity was everything. Territory management was an art form. Good salesmen knew their neighborhoods like postal workers. They knew which houses had new babies, perfect for encyclopedia sales, which families were moving up economically. They tracked patterns when people were home, when they were most receptive. Thursday afternoons were often better than Monday mornings. The demographics were revealing. Door-to-door salesmen were predominantly men, but women dominated certain categories. Avon ladies were almost exclusively female, turning beauty sales into an extension of friendship and social networking. Tupperware parties were run by women for women, creating a social sales model that felt more like entertainment than commerce. These weren't just jobs, they were ways for women to earn independent income while working around family schedules. But the world was changing underneath this industry in ways that became apparent only gradually. Suburbanization, the very force that had created the market for door-to-door sales, was also creating its replacement, the shopping mall. As retail followed residents to the suburbs, the convenience gap that door-to-door sales had filled began to close. Why wait for the Fuller Brush man when you could drive to the mall and choose from dozens of brands? Television advertising changed consumer expectations. People became familiar with national brands and wanted to see and compare products before buying. The personal touch that had been door-to-door sales' greatest advantage began to feel old-fashioned compared to the sophistication of mass marketing and retail display. Safety concerns grew as communities became less tight-knit. In small towns and established neighborhoods, strangers at the door were unusual but not necessarily threatening. But as communities grew larger and more anonymous, people became more suspicious of unannounced visitors. The simple act of knocking on a stranger's door began to feel intrusive rather than friendly. Women entering the workforce in larger numbers meant fewer people were home during the day. The housewife who had been the primary target of door-to-door salesmen was increasingly likely to be at an office or factory herself. Evening visits were possible, but families were busier, more protective of their personal time, less likely to let work follow them home. The rise of consumer protection laws made door-to-door sales more complicated. Cooling-off periods gave customers time to reconsider purchases, reducing the effectiveness of emotional sales techniques. Licensing requirements and registration processes made it harder for companies to recruit and deploy sales teams. What had once been a relatively simple business model became encumbered with regulations and restrictions. Credit cards and installment buying changed the economics of major purchases. You no longer needed a sympathetic salesman to make expensive items affordable. You could buy them immediately and pay over time. The encyclopedia salesman's payment plans were no longer special, they were standard practice everywhere. The transformation of retail was relentless. Department stores expanded into suburbs, specialty shops moved to strip malls. Discount retailers offered lower prices with less service. By the 1970s, you could buy everything a door-to-door salesman offered, often for less money and with more selection, just by driving to the nearest shopping center. The final blow came from changing American homes themselves. New suburban developments were designed with privacy in mind. Houses were set back from streets, protected by lawns and driveways. Front doors became less accessible. The physical architecture of suburbia made door-to-door sales more difficult, just as suburbia was creating the customers who might have wanted those services. Companies adapted as long as they could. Some moved to telephone sales, though it never had the same effectiveness. Others focused on party plan selling, but most simply scaled back, then disappeared entirely. By 1980, door-to-door sales employed fewer than half the people it had in 1970. By 1990, it was a tiny fraction of what it had been. Companies that had been household names, Fuller Brush, Electrolux, World Book, either went out of business or transformed into something completely different. The knock on the door, once as familiar as the telephone's ring, became so unusual that it was more likely to be ignored than answered. What died with door-to-door sales wasn't just a business model, it was a way of doing business that was fundamentally human. The door-to-door salesman had to succeed on personality, knowledge, and genuine customer service. They couldn't hide behind brand names or rely on impulse purchases. They had to earn trust, address concerns, and deliver real value. When they succeeded, both seller and customer felt good about the transaction. There was also something democratic about door-to-door sales that's hard to replicate in modern retail. The encyclopedia salesman treated the factory worker's family with the same respect as the doctor's family. The Avon lady served every neighborhood equally. Products and services went where customers needed them, not just where real estate was cheap and parking was plentiful. The personal relationships formed through door-to-door sales created a different kind of customer loyalty. When your Avon lady retired or your Fuller Brush man moved to a different territory, you felt like you were losing a friend, not just a supplier. These weren't transactions, they were ongoing relationships built on mutual benefit and genuine human connection. Modern direct sales, online shopping, telemarketing, email marketing is more efficient but less personal. We've gained convenience but lost the human touch that made door-to-door sales special. No algorithm can read your facial expressions or adjust a presentation based on your concerns. No website can answer the questions you didn't know you had or suggest solutions to problems you hadn't considered. If you remember the knock on the door, followed by, "Good afternoon, I'm here to show you something that will change your life." You remember a time when commerce was personal, when salespeople were neighbors, and when a stranger at your door might actually be bringing you something you needed. You remember when home shopping meant someone came to your home to help you shop, not the other way around. Where did the door-to-door salesman go in your neighborhood? Do you remember the encyclopedia salesman's demonstration, the vacuum cleaner show in your living room, the Avon lady's monthly visit? Those memories matter because they represent a time when business was still fundamentally about people helping people, when trust was earned face-to-face, and when the best sales technique was simply genuine care about the customer's needs.